What is up, fellow traders? I received a couple requests from BDAO and some others to get this video out before the open on Monday. Just kind of curious my thoughts on the semis and everything else. I must admit, I am pretty tired. I had an active weekend, so this is going to be the low energy ramble video, I guess. I should probably title these funny names, but anywho. So for context, there was quite the move in the Qs and SMH, right? So everything had been breaking out. We were like full bull market 2021 all over again. Like Apple's breaking out. We go almost 15% in a week. Then we have the semis. We all know that story, like NVIDIA, ARM, Micron, Avigo, aka Broadcom, which I always mess up and I'm too tired to correct. And so then even SMH. And so obviously, like, we had things start to implode, right? Like Intel absolutely imploded. AMD kind of looked like it was going to save the sector on 7-31, but then it all got faded. Then ARM had earnings Thursday after the close, and we got wrecked on Friday. And like one thing that I want to point out is, like, I'm not a fundamental analyst, but without knowing anything about these earnings or the data, like I've literally not even looked at them, but I almost feel like what's simply happening here is just the pendulum, right? Things got way too hot. Like things were like, look what ARM did when it normally started trading. It was already theoretically overvalued, believed by many. Like the average trading range was like a couple bucks. Then we have the crazy earnings. Then it just was nuts for like months and months and months. Like even the Micron was super nuts breaking out. Like Micron's not even really so much of an AI play, and it started going crazy. Then we have stuff like SMCI. Like, again, I don't want to be a fundamental analyst here, but I personally thought SMCI going to 1,000 and 1,200 along with the Dell move was some of the dumbest shit I've seen since 2021. Yeah, blah, 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 earnings expansion, yada, yada, yada. Like, don't get me wrong. Of course, earnings are expanding and whatever else. But essentially, like, everybody was putting the cart too far ahead of everything, where it's like, okay, sure, we get it. AI is a big deal. And like I've done in some of those past videos, I just argued that this was just like the way too euphoric move. You know, like if we go back to NVIDIA, this was the original AI breakout, right? Essentially, NVIDIA then went up almost 5x in about a year and a half since then. That's a really crazy move for something that was, you know, pretty telegraphed all throughout all these earnings reports. So my personal view on some of this stuff is like, yeah, we can point it to CPI, we can point it to unemployment, we can point it to some of these earnings, which I'm sure, of course, have kernels of truth to them. But like, you know, just people just went out too far on the mania limb. We were getting euphoric. Like, like it's not coincidental that I said this was going to be, you know, a big picture top, and here we are. Like, I don't know. I mean, some of this stuff is like almost like 50% off. These are massive moves. Like SMCI is 50% off highs, Micron's very off highs, and so like, what it really comes down to now, of course, is what's the play for Monday. And so very intentionally, I did not do this video until futures opened, and actually even a little bit after that, because so many people waste too much time game planning over the weekend when it's like, I'm going to get 3 different things, almost 4 different things of information ahead of Monday's open, right? I'm going to find out where the futures open at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to find out where some of these individual names open for overnight trading at 8 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Then I'm going to be able to see pre-market. I mean, it's kind of hard being out on the West Coast time-wise, but maybe I'll be awake and alive and coherent for pre-market, maybe not. But you get pre-market data, then of course you get the open. So I try not to like waste too much time. Like for all we know, NASDAQ could have opened up like 1.5%, and a lot of the game planning of these panics kind of ends up moot. That being said, the other thing I want to touch on is over the weekend we got two big headlines. The first being that Buffett dumped a shit ton of Apple. Huge amount of stake. He continued to dump some BAC. And then also there was an information article on NVIDIA about NVIDIA's chip being potentially delayed. And so personally, I think a lot of this continuation weakness is the Qs are down 1.4 right now. I suspect a lot of that is potentially the NVIDIA and the Apple sale. I'm really curious to see at 8 p.m. Eastern where NVIDIA is opening for overnight trade, given it's not like massive volume or liquidity or anything. But I do suspect like my argument was I didn't think we were going to get anything too crazy on Monday, just given the relative strength at NVIDIA and how much this makes up semis and whatever else. But anywho, so now that we are down 1.4%, you do want to plan for that gap down playbook. What do we want to buy? What charts do we like and everything? So that's when I'll just type up tickers. Like I'll go through everything from the VIX. Oh, one other thing. For big picture context, from earlier this morning, I retweeted a video from Stephen Place. Really sharp, smart dude that I've done a lot of his video. I've found value in a lot of his videos. It's all free. So just look for my tweet on his video about the current big picture situation. But essentially, a lot of different trades around the globe are kind of unwinding right now. A lot of people were getting out over their skis. Same with the AI trade and everything else. And even same with just tech. Like, when the hell does Apple break out 15% in a straight line? But anywho, so pretty big move in VIX. I'll definitely be watching the VIX. I'll definitely be watching the VIX relative to what the market does. The Qs now. I'm actually not so interested in the Qs. Why am I not so interested in the Qs? Because really this is kind of, this was almost just like day one of the breakdown. Now we're gapping down a bit more. Let's see, where are the Qs? It's down 1.4%. And so, I can't get a price right now, whatever. So the Qs are not top on my list really, just based on the chart. Something like SMH, we have retraced so much more of this overall move. We've retraced a huge amount. So if I had to pick like Qs, which are still kind of like even above this last equilibrium range, SMH at this point is probably, a little bit even below. And then more than SMH, which I'm not so interested in, I'll definitely watch. Oops, I gotta silence this. I'll definitely watch. But then there's some individual names where again, NVIDIA is still meaningfully above this breakout area and definitely buoying a lot of the semis. But then you have stuff like this Micron. This Micron is just in the total crapper, right? If this was kind of the equilibrium breakout range, call it like 125, 130-ish, right? Not only, and so many people, and this was like my last video rant on the semis, so many people are like, is this a healthy pullback? And I'm like, no, not at all. And it's like Micron, not only had it pulled back 100%, but now at this point, right, 100 means it pulled back 200% of this move. We've pulled back over 200% of that last breakout move. This is just a disaster right now. This is a dumpster fire. If you bought at 160, you might be down 50% on Monday, which is quite a feat to lose that much in a large market cap stock like this. But anywho, so I want to buy the stuff that flushes out really big. This Micron's probably towards the top of my list, because what's so interesting too is again, I don't know who started buying it on all this AI hype, but this really hadn't participated in much hype at all, honestly. This isn't really so crazy except all of this here over the last couple months. And so if we get back into the 80s or 70s, we're so deep into this equilibrium range of really multi-years. And the way I look at it is what happened is we just got too euphoric. I don't want to be an analyst. I don't want to overthink this stuff. I don't yes, I want to be aware of the Stephen Place stuff and the stuff he talks about, but then I just don't want to overthink it. And it's okay, we broke out, we go 30 points, we fail hard, now we're well past 30 points. And as we start to eat into the 80s, and God knows, like, I mean, I'm skeptical we could see the 70s this week. I mean, you never know, but I'm pretty damn skeptical. But man, oh man, oh man, like to go from like this 160, I don't want to say this was 10 out of 10 euphoria. Like SMCI was 10 out of 10 euphoria earlier this year. I would say this Micron and everything, like, and some of these other semis, it was probably like 7 out of 10 euphoria. And so we're going from a 7 out of 10 bullish to probably like, I mean, I'm assuming tomorrow we're going to be at about a -7. You know, who knows if this is at like 80, 86, 85 or something. That's like a -7. You know, a -10 out of 10 would be like the low 70s. And at a certain point, though, it's just like, okay, guys, like not only did you get too euphoric, but now you're just like thinking, oh my God, it's the whole trade's over. Like everything's changed. It's like overall, that's what creates these amazing moves in markets is it's just everyone's so reflective, right? Like, again, like, okay, is AI a big deal? Sure. Is there increased CapEx? Sure. But like the market cap moves these were making were just so ludicrous, and it was just too much too fast. And when not much has changed, let alone from the earnings of these, the companies using the AI. Obviously, it has helped these earnings. And so then some other names. I mean, in general, I want to, so like stuff like an Intel, like this just got blown out on like the worst earnings ever. This never really like was up with some of the AI stuff. Like Intel, I'm not really going to play. Intel doesn't interest me. It's not really part of like the AI euphoria. It's just kind of a shitty stock that just had earnings, which makes it even worse to me. Something like an ARM. An ARM had earnings on 8-1, which is generally a con. But that being said, like this ARM has covered a ton of ground. Like the way I look at it is like we got a little euphoric with everything, but then we found a little equilibrium, and now we're just getting absolutely wrecked. You know, even some of the other stuff like LRCX, like you know, this got wrecked on the ASML. Oops, ASML when ASML got owned. But this LRCX is pretty damn ugly too. And, you know, like even if we look at like a Micron, we found this equilibrium range at 130. Now we're just so far below it. Let's see, what's Avigo doing? Avigo, I'm not so interested. Like Avigo almost reminds me of an Nvidia. We're just kind of in no man's land here, right? Like I want to find what's the stock that went -10, or sorry, what's the stock that went +10 and is now going to -10? Like, I don't think there was a stock that went to +10. But I do think, you know, this Micron went to probably +6 and is now at -6 and will probably be at -7 tomorrow. I mean, even so, my one sleeper pick that I alluded to on Twitter is this Bank of America. Pretty damn boring, but like, yeah, you know, like this is something where like we really had a nice move up. I think this had earnings somewhere in there. Yeah, this was earnings. Yeah, we had earnings, and now like we've already pulled back 15% off highs, and so like if this really gets blown out. In general, like Bank of America is pretty damn boring. It's super liquid. Like I don't think this is going to be some amazing bouncer. Like I don't think, oh my God, we're going back to 42. But I do think that in the realm of things, like if you get this down at like 36, 35, like this went from semi-euphoric above the Bollinger, and now we're just getting absolutely wrecked. I get that, you know, rates are moving. So the other thing that's interesting too, and I'm speaking right now, at like 7 p.m. Eastern. So the Qs are down a good chunk, but as I last checked, let me see. I can't find it on where is it on my little list? TLT, where are you? I don't think these are updating for me. No, I think. Let me see. ZB. No, so those are so. Like TLT at least isn't moving. Like so, at least some rates are staying fairly stable. The dollar versus the yen isn't doing much. I think I have it. Yeah. So I mean the yen's up marginally, which I want to be paying a little bit of attention to, but nothing that crazy. So in general, I mean Bitcoin got nuked. So in general, this feels like a lot of just the risk off rather than, oh my God, like rates are continuing to make some really big move. So like Bank of America, I'll watch, like The VIX I'll definitely just watch in general, but it's probably not my favorite thing. But yeah, the VIX is probably worth watching in general. Like this ETF tends to decay because of the underlying futures and whatnot. Um, what else do I want to mention? Oh, so one important point that B Dowd asked was like, how do I compare this to like a MSTR back in 2022, which was back here he's referencing. Yeah. This was a big panic. So the difference here, God, it's amazing to think that MSTR went up 10x. Holy shit. The difference with this is like, I don't view this move so comparable to back then, because that's when everything was in the garbage. Like this was like MSTR in particular was trading at a massive discount to its Bitcoin holdings. You know, like this was such an, this MSTR was potentially better than any of this stuff so far, I think is setting up, just because you knew it was panicking so much more than Bitcoin and everything. And plus this stuff never went euphoric. So like you need to really give some of this stuff a fairly wide berth, because by the same logic, like, I mean, NVIDIA did start at 50 this year. Not that I think it's going there. Obviously it's not, you know, that's a super long way away. But when this stuff is run up, you really do want to give it some berth on some of this stuff. Because there's a lot of room to go. You know, like get NVIDIA into the low 90s or the 80s, and I'm interested. But the difference is like, you know, stuff like this Micron though, you know, it's much more retraced from all of this range overall. So I guess the difference in this pattern is like, we're going from euphoric to panic very, very quickly. Whereas before that was just, you know, steady week, then puke out. Like both can be good. The benefit of the May 22 stuff was like those names, you know, like you mentioned Carvana and Coinbase and stuff, and ARK I also played back then. The benefit of some of that stuff was you're playing with a lower bound of 0 and you're very, very close to it. You know, this stuff made like 70 to 34. Like that was just such a big quick move. And we got that huge volume capitulation. So like all of that was nice. And the best part about this is you're so close like to the lower bound of 0, right? You know, something that goes from 70 to 35, you can't lose another 35 points, right? The ARK ETF is not going to 0. So that was the big benefit there. The big pro on these is that we're simply starting from euphoria, but then the con is we're kind of, a lot of these names, like for now are kind of in a no man's land for me. Not all of them. Like this is at least in more of a no man's land. I think someone else asked, do I have interest in SMCI? SMCI, for example, I have no interest, right? Because this was kind of like a pretty big range and we just broke below. So SMCI doesn't interest me. I want to find the stuff that's just like the most, the stuff again, like, and this never went anywhere close to that. Like this didn't follow any of that euphoria. This had already topped. So in general, my blueprint for all this is I find me the stuff that went, you know, the highest on the euphoria pendulum and is now going the most, right? So it's not NVIDIA. You know, NVIDIA definitely got a little bit euphoric, and but we're really kind of, you know, if anything, I would give versus equilibrium, I would give NVIDIA a +2. We went +7 to +2. You know, Avigo, we maybe went from like +8 to 0, or +1 or something. But then when we get a Micron, we probably went like, I don't know, +6 to -6 or 7. So that's pretty damn good. ARM, maybe we went from +5 or 6 to -5 or 6. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about these things. The thing is, of course, like this stuff can always go further, like especially with the headlines that happened over the weekend. Who knows what big headlines we're going to potentially get tomorrow. So do I think tomorrow is going to be the bounce day? Obviously, I have no idea. This is not one of those days where I'm like, oh my God, this is a no-brainer. as always, like, you need to trade your own game plan. You need to trade your own strategy. This is not financial or market advice. You need to do your own thing. But if some stuff starts to really flush out, I'm going to personally be comfortable buying some front side. For now, all I did was sell a little bit of puts. I sold a little bit of ARM puts. I sold a little bit of Micron puts. Micron, I have a microscopic amount of stock. What other puts did I sell? Oh, even Crowd is a name that interests me. Obviously, Crowd has the big news. Then we had the Delta news. So this is trading on news, but nevertheless, I think I kind of get the feeling that kind of the market started to weigh on this the last couple days. And I think this is, Shark and I sometimes talk about this, but this is almost like beach ball-esque, where it's been pulled down, pulled down, pulled down. And it's kind of, if it just very qualitative, it kind of feels ready to pop to me. But what's happened is the market has been kind of pulling it down those last couple of inches. I could be dead wrong, and ultimately, like views are cheap. Price action is all that matters. And I really want, I'll watch this for a potential break of prior bar highs. This did show some decent relative strength into the close, but no amazing volume flush out. And so, that's one of the things, if we want to talk about what I'll be looking for, let's get some really good volume flush out. Let's get some really good range expansion. I really want to see what NVIDIA does, just that otherwise being the relatively strong leader. And so again, like, you want to spend the weekend studying past opportunities. You want to come up with how you're going to trade these, but I try not to wed my view too much to anything, just because, like, I'm going to get so much more information, pre-market when I theoretically wake up. I'm going to have so much more information where these trade at the open. But what you can do is, like, here's one thing that's a no-brainer. Depending, I don't want to say that it's at least for me is a no-brainer. Okay, like SMH is at 220. I know I'm not going to be up at 4 a.m. Eastern. There's no chance I'm up at 1 a.m. West Coast time. I'm gonna be asleep. But for me, it's a no-brainer to just put some bids in. Just like some Hail Mary bids that in theory should never get hit, but just God forbid some crazy panic happens pre-market or something crazy overnight. I'm putting bids in where it's just like the odds of you making money. If I get filled early on SMH minus 10%, I will take that position every time. And you got to be somewhat careful of news, but most news isn't happening super early in the morning anyways. But it's like, okay, you can, I'm speaking for myself, do your own decisions, take your own risk. This isn't advice. Like me putting bids in at like low 90s in ARM, like I am very comfortable getting filled there. Me putting bids in low 80s at Micron, I'm very comfortable putting bids in. And again, I'll get some idea of where this stuff is roughly trading just from the overnight session. So I don't know. I feel like this is a decent overview. Then of course you wanna really game plan. How much risk do I want to allocate to this? What patterns do I want to see? What's going to confirm? And I think one thing that's underrated is what are the types of traps that you're gonna want to avoid? What are the traps that you tend to fall for? Okay, if something is just grinding lower and maybe you fight the front side, or maybe you underweight the daily chart, or maybe you get too much stock before the volume capitulates, whatever is specific to you, you want to start thinking about that. I gave some tweet on Friday about different things I'd be thinking about. So that's the type of game planning I want to do, but I don't want to wed myself to any specific view when I'm going to get more data on where these are in a little bit. But yeah, that's the overall thoughts. If I had to summarize this all in one sentence, like if I was looking for past comparables, I'd be finding stuff that went very high on the pendulum and then is going the opposite on the pendulum. That's what I view as one of the main differences from the Carvana MSTR day, and this has its own different pros and cons. Given that, and in general with stock selection, like people mentioned like IWM. I have no interest in IWM. Okay, we potentially had sector rotation. Now it all died. We're just in the middle of the range. This is kind of no man's landy to me. There's a lot of stuff that was no man's landy to me. So yeah, one sentence summary. I want to find the stuff that went to positive 10 and is now going to negative 10. on the Euphoria pendulum. Again, I don't really think there is some perfect ticker here. Like, I don't think Nvidia was positive 10. I don't think any of these were. SMCI back, the example that would have been my ideal is, imagine if something did an SMCI up move, we consolidated, made some type of lower high, then this puked all the way back to like 400 or 300. Like, that is like the, oh my God, give me so much stock on a sharp move, because the equilibrium and the truth probably is somewhere in the middle. And so that's generally the thing with a lot of these. So the other thing I would point out too is, if we don't flush out, like, I'm fine being patient and doing nothing. Like in general, like, prior bar highs can keep you out of a lot of trouble. But the difference is, though, is if we open at 88, then we flush to like 80. I don't want to wait all the way to 90 to buy, especially on a move that big. Like, because if I buy at the 80s, me personally, I don't mind getting even more at the 70s. If this literally goes from 160 to 70, like, okay, I'll take my odds. I'll roll the dice on that. Again, the beauty with, and so someone else on Twitter was like, oh my God, like, how are you going to trade this? You're usually just good at parabolic moves. It's like a panic and a waterfall is just the same thing as a parabolic upside move, but reverse. Like, the concepts and the psychology and the chart's the same, except there's, and so this came up in a review I did with Yanni on Friday, and his group. Like, the difference, like, buying panics is so much better than shorting parabolic euphoria. Why is that? One, they can't go to infinity. Two, you have a lower bound of a zero, or some ridiculous fair value. Like, this isn't like Micron's not gonna like, look at this 3-year chart. Like, it's hard to imagine Micron settling in below 50 when it was just at 160, and for years it's been here. Like, we didn't just go from like an AI mega cycle to, oh my God, the worst bust of all time in a couple weeks. Yeah, I'm not saying that won't happen in a couple years, but in a couple weeks that didn't happen. It's just the pendulum largely. And the other benefit with buying stuff is, you don't need to worry about locates. You don't need to worry about borrows. You can't get mega blown out to infinity. And then, of course, right, the amount of capital you can put to work is far more on a percentage return, right? Like, if SMCI, the best you can make in SMCI, even if you short 1100, in no way are you ever even going to make 50%. But if this were to have really flushed out and goes to 300, you can maybe make 100% when it goes to $600. If with stuff like Micron, like, the average person, like, maybe they were going to make 20% in this Micron, where you short this and you catch this kind of equilibrium range. Maybe you reshort, but anywho, like, that's kind of the leg. But the beauty, at least on a percentage basis, is if this mega pukes, you can really make some huge chunks of return on capital. Anywho, I think this video went long enough. Let me know if any questions. Everyone, most of all, be smart tomorrow. Like, nothing says tomorrow needs to be the bottom. Listen to the charts always. Risk management always comes first. Wait for the see it moment. Generally, the best trades slap you in the face. So if you're ever, at least one good heuristic for me, if I'm getting ever frustrated, if I'm getting upset, if I'm like, oh my God, why isn't this shit working? It probably means you're wrong. Not necessarily wrong on the idea, but at least wrong on the timing. So again, play smart. Generally wait for the turn. Wait for the see it moment. Follow your game plans. Follow your experience. Trust yourself. And as always, trade at your own risk. These are just my thoughts and nothing more. Thank you all.